Hey guys, this is White Manga, writer and artist of the somewhat critically acclaimed PAPERBACK manga series. There will be a link below for you guys to go read and check it out. And you can come back and tell me what you think about it. I would really appreciate any support that anyone gives me, and I like to thank all the support that I've gotten so far. There are big things coming up with PAPERBACK, and I'll be sure to let you guys know. And one of these things is Saturday AM, and there will be more details about Saturday AM in the description below. Thank you, and enjoy the second part of the series where I am teaching or giving tips on how to, or at least how I create manga pages with, paper, pencil, ink, the tools I use, the softwares I use like Manga Studio and etc. So, yeah, enjoy. So, this is what we have, and we're picking up from where we left off. You can see me, going over the panel lines we created in the previous video. So if you missed the video where I talked about the paper we're using, the type of paper it is, the guidelines by the side, and how to use this kind of paper, you might want to check the previous video, which was how to sketch a manga page, and it will really help. You don't need to, but it'll really help to show you how we got to this point. So it will talk on how to be light and everything. So sketching, use of the paper, the guidelines, and just the things to look out for, and a couple tips. The tools you need to use here, as you can see, I'm using the G Pen, and there is also a tutorial on the G Pen. So I'm not really going to go into too much detail on how to use the G Pen. There's a completely completely different video that touches on that, but I'll just throw a couple tips here and there. Like, you have to watch out for the pressure you're putting on the pen. The harder you push it, the thicker the line. And the only reason you might want to have a thick line is if the character is really close to the screen, close to the viewer. Characters that are really behind, almost like backgrounds, want to have thinner lines. But if you're going to be closer, you want the character to pop out, and you want him thick. That means it helps, because that way there will be a lot of line variation. And because if all the lines are like the same and they have the same thickness and stuff, it will be it's going to be hard to look at. So that's a tip of mine that I'm going to throw out there that's probably didn't throw in the G Pen video, but I think is useful to know. What we'll be using in this video, we're going to be using obviously the G Pen, the ruler like we just did to draw the panel lines, the Sakura Micron inking pens, which were used for drawing the panel lines, and I used size 08. I think is the thickest one for drawing the panel lines, and I generally tend to use 01 or 005 to ink backgrounds, but I use the G Pens for inking characters. So that's what you can see me doing right now. And at the end of everything, I'm going to use an eraser to erase the pencils. Now, what some other people do is they put the pencils under another paper and a light table under everything, so they can see the pencils on the paper that's like the first layer. So that way they can trace it, and they'll have the two versions. They'll have the pencils and have the inks. I guess that way they can keep the pencils, and it also helps if you make a mistake. You can use the pencils all over again. But the way I work, I tend to ink straight on the pencils. If I do end up making a mistake, which tends to happen, I always scan in, as I will scan in anyway. I scan into the computer and I touch it up and do little edits here and there. So I put it in Manga Studio and I edit the page. And I'm going to scan in anyways, because I'm going to tone the comic digitally in Manga Studio. So that's the third part of this video, which is not uploaded yet. So you guys should watch out for that. There'll be a completely new video on me just focusing on toning adding text, and all that good stuff. But for here, we're just focusing on the inking the page itself. So I hope you guys are like watching me do this. It's pretty straightforward. It's basically just tracing. So what I'm doing is using the G pen to ink the characters and Sakura Micron inking pens to draw straight lines and backgrounds. So straight lines, that is like the panel lines with 0, 8, and backgrounds with 0, 1 or 0, 05. I tend to use 0, 05 if the background is pretty far in the shot, or I use 0, 1 if it's still a background but it's pretty close. I also use the 0, 1 or 0, 2 or 0, 3, depending on how I want things to look. But I use like a 0, 1 to like a 0, 3 to do the speed lines. And as you can see, working with the speed lines, here's another tip. You want to have, if it's going to be a speed line, you have to make sure that the lines are parallel. Or like you can see here, these are focus lines, so they're all pointing to one spot. So you make sure that you put a dot, and all the lines are all pointing to that dot. And while you're drawing the lines, you don't draw like a complete line. You draw it like as a stroke, so that the ends they all have this light touch to them. So these are focus lines. They're all focusing at a spot. So you have to make sure that that spot is you want to keep things constant. Then I'm going over the backgrounds with the 0, 1 Sakura microns. That's what I'm doing. But back to speed lines. If you're gonna do like speed lines, maybe someone's running, you want all the lines to be parallel, and you want to have the distance between lines should be random, yet looking organized at the same time. My advice is to study other mangas that you like and see how they do their speed lines and try to duplicate that. Most times for normal speed lines, you want it to be parallel. Sometimes people do curved lines, and those curved lines are actually like focus lines also. So they're all pointing to the same spot, but they're all curving the same way. The focus lines that I did here, they're not curving, they're just straight, and that also works. Like I said, my best advice for speed lines or focus lines would be to study other manga and see how they do it, because there's so many ways to do this. Also, there is a template on Manga Studio that does speed lines for you, and I'll have more Manga Studio tutorials in the future because I think it's pretty neat. There are also splash lines, mostly used for emotions, so that'll fall under future tutorials that I'll be posting, because I'll be posting a lot of tutorials. This channel is pretty new, but expect a lot from me. So yeah, this is most of it. Right now I'm going to go over the spots I have for the sound effects. And here, generally professionals use a brush. I know an artist, Takahiro Inoue, guy that does Vagabond, great work. He uses calligraphy pens or calligraphy brushes. Here I'm just using a normal brush. Normally you use whatever. Even though I'm saying throwing out all these tools, there's so many ways to do this. So you just use whatever you're most comfortable with. Like Mark Curley uses Sakura Micron inking pens for the whole thing. Here I'm using G pens. G pens are generally used for shonen mangas, especially in Japan. So, but really you can use anything that you're comfortable with. And Takahiro uses calligraphy pens and calligraphy brushes and whatever. So this is really just my way. And as you can see, there are other ways of the brushes are also used to fill in blacks. You can use the brushes to fill in the blacks like you see me, like you just saw, or you can use Sharpies. The thing about Sharpies is after a while, after years actually, the color tends to change, but that shouldn't be a problem here. So those are ways to do it. Another way to fill in blacks is to fill the blacks in Manga Studio, which I'll show you in a second. Right now, as you can see, I am erasing all the pencils, so I'm getting that over with. And obviously you can see some mistakes that I've made while inking. Most times that tends to happen. Sometimes I'm perfect, sometimes I'm not, but no worries. So I will show you guys a way to clean little mistakes in Manga Studio. So right now I am going to take this into Manga Studio to, touch it up a little bit and clean any errors I may have made. Now this is after I have scanned the page. Don't no worries for people who are wondering how I scan the page. I'll make a separate video, because I don't want this video to be too long. So I'll make a separate video on how I scan pages, because there's a little work that goes into that. It's not complicated at all, but it's gonna take like, I don't know, extra 3 minutes. So I don't really want to go over that. What I would say is the scanner I use is the Mustec 1200 A3 Pro scanner. So a Mustec 1200 A3 Pro scanner. You can see the text below. And this is after I've scanned it, and now I'm putting it in here. So after it, you place the page where it's supposed to be. Now, before I even scanned it, I had like I dotted where the page is going to cut off. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, that I talked about it in the previous video, because Deleter B4 paper has has some guidelines. It shows you where the parts of the page is going to be cut off. So I put like dots to form like a rectangle to show where it's going to cut off. And now I'm just placing the page in the correct place. And after that, I'm going to rasterize the page in Manga Studio, just to make it like put it in a format where I can mess with it and clean it up and stuff like that. Just getting it ready for editing, basically. So now you're gonna watch me basically clean all the smudges that I made, all the errors in the drawing. Maybe the ink was just not dry enough at some point, or some parts look a little shaky, so I'm just gonna go over it with the eraser. It's that easy. Just make sure you're on the layer. So you see me cleaning up parts of the sound effects and the places where I thought maybe the inking could have been better. I'm cleaning up the edges that I made with the panel lines. And after all the cleaning, then I'll show you guys how to fill, which is what I'm doing, the remaining spots, which is pretty easy. Or use the lasso tool. If you follow the video closely, you'll see what I'm doing. So I use get like a use the black G pen in the Manga, because Manga Studio has its own G pen. I use the G pen to create create the white highlights. Then I just fill the spaces with black. So I use the lasso tool to get where I want, and then I fill the remaining places. I just fill in blacks. A more detailed tutorial will come with time, but for now this is it's pretty straightforward if you know the basics of layers and Photoshop or Manga Studio or anything like that. So I just take the parts that I want and I just fill. Lastly, just to remind you guys, just for the record, again, there's so many ways to ink a manga page. Some people may even ink the whole thing in Manga Studio. The only reason I don't do that is because I'm not as fast. I have to keep up with deadlines and stuff like that. So I ink on paper. I think I'm a faster artist on paper, and I'm faster at popping pages out using on paper and then scanning them in and working things from there. But some people who have better tablets than I do, probably the expensive stuff, the Cintiq and stuff like that, they ink straight into the computer. There are even cases like Mark Creeley, like I said earlier, who inks completely with Sakura Micron inking pens. It probably inks with some other stuff too, and I think he toned on the computer, probably with Photoshop, not Manga Studio, but he does the initial inking with Sakura inking pens. So there's so many ways to do this. This is just one way. Maybe in the video I'll have a second version to a video like this, but for now this is something to work with. I think I touched on almost everything. So stay tuned for the last installment to this little series I have going on here, where in the last video I will go into more detail on toning, and yeah, stay tuned for that. if you guys have any suggestions for tutorials that you want to see me do after that, you can leave that in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. So like this video, favorite this video. It means a lot. Any support at all means a lot. So leave comments, likes, favorites, share this video if you can. So I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial so far. So stay tuned for the final installment. Lastly, if you guys want to read Apple Black, there will be a link in the description and the link in the description below, and the details on Saturday AM that I talked about earlier. But yeah, besides that, we good. We good.